Before we get started, we've got one thing to go through here. Based on my advice from my lawyer, I have to read through this first. This video is intended as entertainment only. Its advice should not be taken seriously nor implemented in any way whatsoever. My lawyer, who is a total buzzkill and probably couldn't wrestle anyone to save his life, just wants you to know that if you do follow this advice and damage anything or hurt yourself in any way, contact him at Tuggle, and Segal Associates. Now, as a good woodworker, we know things get dusty, things get dirty, but even we like to clean some things at sometimes, particularly our bench. We want this nice and clean, occasionally get some stain on it, stuff like that, so we got to clean it off. What's the easiest way to do that? Now, you're probably thinking maybe some water. We have spray bottle water, maybe not strong enough. What about some Simple Green? It's all right. You know, it takes some stuff off, but maybe not strong enough. What we really want to look for here are solvents. Now, my favorite to use is going to be lacquer thinner. Now, you may notice, don't breathe this in, don't ingest it, don't do any of that. But that's really all the bottle says. It removes things, it dissolves things. So we should use some lacquer thinner, I think. So what is the ideal way to apply this? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to want to coat the bench in this. Don't be afraid to use more than you think you're going to need. You're going to want to let it sit there for 10-15 minutes. And again, this works really well if you have a polyurethane coated bench. It is going to get it extra clean. Then you're going to want to take something like a cloth, hopefully something with a lot of fibers, something that breaks apart easily. And you're going to want to just slowly pull it through there and wipe it off. And in no time, you will notice you have one of the cleanest benches you could ever wish for. Now, when you get into woodworking, you're going to start off with basic woods. You're going to start off with your pines, maybe even just your construction lumber, your 2x4, some stuff like that. Then your home center, depending upon where you live, will likely have poplars, some red oak, stuff like that. If you're lucky, maple, walnut. But, you know, domestics, they get a little boring after a while. And you're going to discover the world of exotic lumber. Now, the first thing you're going to think is, oh, wow, that's expensive. But you'll get over it. You're already in debt from buying that last tool, so it doesn't really matter. You're going to shop around. You're going to find that there are hundreds of different types. And really, you're just looking for what looks the most interesting to you. So you're going to order a few different types. Doesn't really matter what. You're going to order it, and it's going to come to your house, and you are going to be super excited. Let's take, for example, get this boring walnut out of the way. This beautiful piece of rosewood. You're in love with it. It looks amazing. But you get home and you notice, boy, my hands are a little red after kind of holding this, and you're not quite sure what's happening. So you bring it back to your bench, you're inspecting it. Maybe you got to remove the sticker, something like that. You know, it's got to wait 2 weeks to acclimate. Your hands are getting a little red. Your nose is getting a little sniffly. You're not quite sure what's going on, so you go online, you do a little bit of reading. You end up on the wood database because it's possibly the greatest resource for identifying and learning about wood that there possibly exists. And on there you notice a ways down the section there's a little bit about allergic reactions. And you suddenly realize you're having a mild allergic reaction to this wood. And they tell you to be careful and that you could even end up in the hospital. But here's the problem. You've already gone into debt, more debt, to buy this extremely nice piece of wood. It is beautiful. You want to use it. So of course, you're going to take that advice and you're going to say, it can't be that bad, right? Well, let's not worry. We actually have a way to solve this while we wait 2 weeks for this to acclimate. What you're going to want to do is when you get it, right before it acclimates, you're going to want to just kind of sand off some bunch of dust, and you're going to want to mix it in with some other sawdust and just keep it out, maybe store it in a little cup. Set this aside, let it acclimate for 2 weeks. Every day over the next 2 weeks, you're going to want to take a little pile of this dust and just kind of do one of these. Just kind of rub it around, get it on you, and each day you're going to take a little more, and you're going to do it for a little longer and a little longer. Now, you're going to get really red, your nose is going to get really runny, but at the end of that 2 weeks, you will have built up a perfect tolerance to this wood. Then you can work with it and you will have absolutely no problems. There's nothing to worry about. It's only a minor allergic reaction. You certainly are not going to end up in the hospital as long as you slowly give yourself a microdose of this dust to get yourself acclimated, just like the wood needs to acclimate to your shop. Early on in your woodworking journey, your two best friends are going to be the drill or drill driver, or drill and driver, and fasteners of some sort, screws almost certainly. But after a little while doing some research on projects, you're gonna realize like these don't look great sticking out the side of stuff, they're not best for every application, and you're gonna read up more and you're gonna say, I need to get some glue. And you're gonna head to the hardware store. You're gonna set all these aside. You know you'll still need these because sometimes you gotta do something quick or sometimes a screw works perfect. But you head to that hardware store and you get there, going down the aisle at Home Depot, and you see the glue. And you realize glue is really the heart of a lot of woodworking, and you realize there are a ton of choices. There are so many different glues, in fact, that you are overwhelmed. So what do? Well, you go online, you watch some videos, and you realize most people use a brand called Titebond. But you realize there are 3 main types of Titebond and about 5 other types. But most likely you'll see 3 main ones. I don't have the third. Titebond 3, Titebond 2, and Titebond Original. And again, you are somewhat confused. Most expensive, more expensive, least expensive. You don't love spending money, but more expensive things are more better, right? So how are we gonna decide which is the best glue here for whatever project we're doing? All we have to do is think back to 3rd, 4th grade, maybe even earlier math. 3 is greater than 2, and 2 is greater than original. It's really that simple. Yes, it's more expensive, but 3 is bigger than 2 and 2 is bigger than original. So ideally here, we're gonna spend more money. We're gonna grab Titebond 3. We're never gonna think about it ever again. We're just always gonna continue to pay for Titebond 3 because 3 is bigger than 2 and 2 is bigger than the original. Therefore, through the transitive property, 3 is better than original. And you will never ever question this, and you will always tell everyone who ever asks that they should get Titebond 3. And you'll be a better woodworker for it. As a somewhat new woodworker, early on you'll realize there are a lot of different tools that are sold in a corded or cordless version, but also there are a lot of our most essential tools that are corded. But what is one of the most annoying things about the corded tools? Well, we have to plug and unplug the cord, we have to wrap it up. These are just so convenient. Battery, stick the battery somewhere, whatever. How can we still use these in all of our big machines without ever having to put the cords back? There's actually a really simple answer to this problem. Let me show you. You're not going to do anything with them. You're going to strategically leave these laying out everywhere. There's also a benefit to this. We as woodworkers do a lot of standing, concrete floors, but we're not getting a lot of movement. Our back hurts a little bit, our stomach hurts for some unknown reason. We don't get enough exercise. But if we strategically place these in the right spots, we can get a lot of built-in exercise, specifically the high step. And we can kind of work our way back and forth and get some really good exercise. Never, ever put the cords away. Make sure to leave these at a variety of different heights. Ideally, they're all gonna be black. Even better if you have some black floor mats in here, and just make sure you get your little workout in every day, going over, under. Heck, why don't we just go under these things? Look at that, that's an ab workout. I'm getting more fit by the day. As we mentioned earlier, one of the biggest problems with woodworking is wood dust. It gets everywhere, and apparently it's not good for your health, but what do those scientists know? Anyways, you're a little concerned. Again, you've read up, you've seen some people on forums, you've watched YouTube woodworking videos, safety videos, and everybody talks about dust. It's a problem, it's bad for your health, right? You end up talking like this at age 45 doing one of these things with that machine on your throat. How do we solve that? Well, obviously, safety gear. We need the dust mask. Now, as a good woodworker, you keep your safety gear and your bag of lollipops relatively close. You got your dust mask, safety glasses. They're there, they're within reach. Whenever you need them, you just bring them out and over. But one of the biggest problems with these is they're not always the most comfortable in the world. Wrong. The biggest problem with these, they do not look cool. You end up looking ridiculous when you put this stuff on. Just look at me, I look ridiculous. Now, depending upon your age, you may remember some famous models, Fabio, but more importantly, a very, very famous model named Derek Zoolander. Mid-2000s, if I remember correctly, he was famous for blue steel and later Magnum. Did Derek Zoolander wear a mask? No. Derek Zoolander was cool. He was cool enough to make blue steel. Had Derek Zoolander been wearing a mask, the world would never have gotten blue steel. Now again, it's mostly a solitary practice here. You don't always have to look cool, whatever. But on the rare occasion that somebody does walk into your shop, do you really want to be sat there looking like this? What is your friend gonna think of you when they walk in and they see you looking like Bane? So my advice is to prioritize looking cool over safety. Dust mask, glasses, get rid of them. Also, taper your vest or apron by pulling these things back as tight as humanly possible to expose your V-taper. Look at how freaking cool I look. Never again allow safety gear to make you look like an idiot. On that same safety video earlier, the person likely got into talking about saw blades. Table saw blades especially. And they had some advice for them. What was that big piece of advice they talked about? You don't really remember, but I'm going to remind you. It was about something called kickback, where the wood either pinches or gets lifts off a bit and it flies straight back at you. It's terrifying, it's loud, it's fast. That thing will go through your wall, it'll go through your abdomen if you're really unlucky. If not, break a rib, leave a giant bruise. You know, minor problems, right? But we don't want to have to deal with that at all. So how do we eliminate that risk entirely? Well, we have two options here, but there's really one that's simple. Table saw blade normally goes in like this. One of the biggest problems, of course, is we can't see the cool labeling on that. For whatever reason, everybody seems to make the label face in. Nobody can see what expensive brand of blade we're using if they happen to walk in from the outside. Huge problem. Again, not our biggest problem here. We're worried about kickback. What if we could solve both of those in one way? We take that table saw blade and we flip it around. No longer can those teeth grab and throw that back out at us because they're facing the other direction. If anything, we are more safe now. Anything in front of us where we're not standing is now more at risk. Now you might say, that seems ridiculous, but then you think back to your physics class and mass times acceleration equals force, which means teeth the other way equals more safer, more better. Early on, you'll do this and you'll notice, wow, there's a lot of burning and it doesn't sound good and my motor's getting hot. That's okay. It's actually good for your saw to go through a little bit of trial and tribulation. And most importantly, you'll no longer have to ever worry about kickback because those teeth will no longer be facing you, and therefore, due to physics, it simply cannot kick back at you. Once you've been woodworking for a little while, you'll end up going to a lumberyard or even ordering from an online lumberyard. Sometimes you'll buy rough lumber or just somewhat rough-ish lumber. Maybe it's been sitting around in somewhere for a long time. It's got a lot of crap all over it. You don't want to run this through your planer, through your knives, table saw, whatever. It can damage the teeth. We got to somehow clean this off. Now, most people would reach for some kind of brush, perhaps just kind of, give it one of these, clean it off there. But really, that's not the most efficient way. Why? Because we also have to wash ourselves. And we would never just kind of rub a brush all over ourselves, would we? That would be ridiculous. It'd be like, I don't know, using the bathroom and only using toilet paper and just kind of rubbing it around. No, of course not. When we shower, we don't just rub ourselves with a cloth. We use water. I always like to keep handy something, oh, come on, sweetheart. You can come out of there. To wash my wood with. So let me show you how it's done. You're gonna take your bath. Ideally, something even like a small children's inflatable pool will work great if you've got a lot of wood. You're gonna hold it over there and we're gonna shower this. We're gonna just take some water and we're just gonna rub it all over that, just like we would shower. You know, scrub it off, just do a little scrubbing, and really just more water. You wanna put as much water on this thing as possible. Now, normally we dry ourselves off afterwards, but really, what's the point? Just let this thing sit there in the water for as long as possible. And before you know it, you will have the cleanest piece of wood you could have ever dreamed of. Thanks for joining me today. And a wise man once told me, good advice is never free, and free advice is never good. And this video costs you nothing.